your friends to get them on because the conversation we are about to have is going to be life changing. I want to welcome everyone to Enter Your Strong Summit interview. We have spent the last few weeks really talking to our special guests so that you can get to know them. And today we are absolutely thrilled to have Mr. Alfred Edmond Jr. He is the success pert, and I like it, not just an expert, but the Successpert. And he's our media partner. And today we have this special interview that we are going to have with him. He's a renowned award-winning individual. He's a journalist, an editor. He is a media executive, and he's also has a distinguished career with Black Enterprise. And everyone knows the impact that Black Enterprise has had on the world, periodly. He's widely recognized for his expertise in personal finance, in entrepreneurship, in mentorship, in leadership development, and just the practical application of faith as it relates to faith and work. So he's Be Lifted Up radio show, which is a faith-based motivational lifestyle program, is dedicated to inspiring listeners like you and I to pursue our purpose and to explore our spiritual gifts. So I want to welcome you to our special interview today.
I am so happy, blessed, and excited to spend this time with you, Dr. Trim. I've been looking forward to this for weeks, and I'm just glad the moment is finally here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. And just before we dive into our conversation, I want you all to watch this. Listen, guys, we are about to have an awesome conversation. We usually listen to radio personalities, we watch movies, we watch interviews, we watch news, but very seldom do we have a behind the scene. And this is our media partner, Mr. Alfred Edmond, Be Lifted Up. And today we're going to take you a little bit behind the scenes so that you can see the man behind the brilliance. Welcome once again.
Oh, I'm so thankful.
So, what are you passionate about?
You know, I've been thinking about this, and when people ask me that question about what I'm passionate about, and I go back to something that I didn't realize until I got older, but was very apparent by the time I was in my early teens. I am passionate about, once we set what the objective is, what we're defining success is, I have a natural God-given gift for saying, okay, what does it take for us to achieve that goal? What's the mindset you need to have? What's the skill sets you need to have? What are the attitudes you need to have in order to achieve that goal? Now how it manifested itself when I was a teenager, I am not built for basketball. I'm about 5'7" at those times, maybe 110 pounds, but I love playing basketball with my friends. And in those days, if you won, you got to stay on the court. Every time, whoever wins, you get to stay on the court. And my thing was like, I wanted to stay on the court. And I learned early on, how do I pick team members who could balance off my weaknesses as someone who was not built to play basketball. And I became very good at picking team members and say, this guy can do this guy can do that, this guy can do that. And then I can do what I can do. And I would end up being on the court all afternoon, even though I am not a good basketball player. And so now, fast forward today, I'm known as the Successpert, in part because whether I was leading teams at Black Enterprise as the editor-in-chief and ultimately chief content officer, or whether I was a mentor, because I mentor kind of a small army of entrepreneurs and professionals. I am good at saying, let's understand what the goal is, and then I can tell you from the outside looking in as kind of a coach, mentor, leader, what do we need to do to achieve that objective? And it's because I'm about winning. Just tell me what the definition of winning is, and my gift, if you will, is I can tell you what we need to do it.
I have one word that comes to my mind: strategy.
Yes.
You are a futurist and strategist. This is what we can accomplish, and this is how we're going to go about doing it, which is a gift.
Yeah.
And, it's a gift that has to be developed over time.
Yes.
Your journey, what does that look like? Because all of us have a unique path that God has arranged for us, and yours is more than unique. Defining moments on that path.
Well, first of all, I've said this in public addresses and panels and speeches all around the country for the last 40 years. There's no way to explain my career if God is not part of it. There's like no way to look at what it is on paper and say, this is the outcome that's going to come from it. I'm the oldest son of a divorced single mother raised on public assistance. Identified as academically gifted at a very young age by the time I was 4, but didn't have the kind of cultural context of understanding what that would mean in the long run. Meaning, while I was told I was going to go to college someday, I had no idea what that meant. Even when I was a junior in high school, I just knew it was the next step after high school. Fast forward, ended up at Rutgers University. A blessing indeed. I'm still a very active and proud alum. Majored in art because that was one of my emerging gifts that emerged when I was very young. Thought it was a safe major. Ended up getting him called to media, to journalism in particular, when I got dragged kicking and screaming to take over this Black and Latino newspaper on campus by my editor-in-chief at the time to take over the paper. And I did it against my will, but it was the best thing that happened to me at the end of that. So I always talk about becoming the editor-in-chief of the Black Voice Carta Boricua at Rutgers University. It was my calling to the profession. Fast forward, my first magazine job at a magazine called Modern Black Men, because my goal then was to get to either GQ or Esquire, because I love fashion, I love style. I consider myself a man.
I could tell by looking.
This little thing I just threw on. But I was on my way thinking I was going to go to GQ and Esquire. I was 26 years old. I was the number 2 editor on this national magazine staff, but I didn't study journalism at all in college. My degree, again, is in art with a minor in economics. I'd never thought I'd use. And I'm in a hotel room, a suite at the Bellage Hotel in Los Angeles. We're doing a special issue in Los Angeles, and I'm having serious imposter syndrome. And I mean, I was in tears because I thought this is going to be when I'm going to be exposed as the underqualified imposter that I am, despite what I had accomplished to that point as a young editor and journalist. And Dr. Trim, I dropped to my knees in tears. And that's when I accepted my calling, meaning I prayed to God, please get me out of Los Angeles without embarrassing myself. Just let me get out without getting fired, without showing that I'm not really the right person for this role in this job. And if you do that, Father, I will dedicate my career in this business as a ministry, not just as a job. And the rest of it is history. A year later, I was at I came to Black Enterprise. It wasn't the fashion magazine I was trying to get to, but the dress code fit the Black Enterprise dress code. So I was home from that standpoint. And then, a few years later, became editor-in-chief of Black Enterprise magazine. And now I'll be celebrating my 37th year at Black Enterprise this coming March. So God has been good. And
yes, congratulations. I want to unpack something that you just finished talking about, and that's the whole idea of imposter syndrome. And I think a lot of people suffer from it. Well, how would you define it?
For me, it was recognizing the truth, because it wasn't that it was untrue. In the eyes of man, on paper, when you talk about sports, on paper, the person doesn't look like a quarterback, but then it turns out to be Tom Brady. You know, on paper, they don't seem like they should be able to do what you're expecting them to do. Well, that was me. On paper, I didn't have a journalism degree. I didn't take one journalism course while I was in college, not at all. I barely knew that I wanted to go to college when I went off to college. Now I'm in journalism in the media business in New York City, and I'm surrounded by people who have not only undergraduate degrees in journalism, but graduate degrees in journalism. And so it was true. In the eyes of man, on paper, there's no way that I should have the career that I've enjoyed over the last 40 years. But then you look at it through the eyes of God, and that's how I looked at it. Every time God called somebody to do something, whether it was Moses or anybody else, they were not qualified to do what they were being called to do. And they said that. They're like, no, you don't want me. I don't even know how to talk. I'm not from that background. I don't have that training. I'm not wise. And then what I've come to believe is that God does that on purpose so you don't think it's you.
Yeah.
It's like there's no way to look at my career and give credit to anyone but God. And so he gets the glory. So for me, imposter syndrome is not, I was really qualified and I didn't believe it. It was really understanding that I really, in the eyes of man, was not qualified.
Yeah.
And God was like, don't worry about it. I'll qualify you. Just do what I told you to do. Go where I told you to go and do what I told you to do. And I think I often, talk to my friends or people who aren't people of faith, and I don't judge them for it, but I don't understand how they do it because I couldn't do it. I need God to make sense of myself, much less the rest.
You need something to lean on.
That's what I'm saying.
Something and someone to lean on.
Yes. And so,
and I think this is why I'm fascinated by your decision to have this radio show be lifted up. It's faith-based, it's motivational, it's informational, it's lifestyle, it's educational, it's entertaining, and it's inspiring. But what inspired you? I mean, you have this successful career. What inspired you to create this program, and what impact do you hope that it's going to have on the listener?
Well, Be Lifted Up came to me as an opportunity. God's timing is always the right timing, but at a good time in my life is I'm still at Black Enterprise, so it's not like my career is over at Black Enterprise.
Yeah.
But I was at a stage of my life when I wanted to be able to my capacity to do what I do, which is, provide successpert, if you will, to people. But for the first time, in a platform that was core to my faith. Now, again, Black Enterprise is a ministry to me because everything I've done in my career is a ministry to me. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm doing anything different for Black Enterprise that I do for Be Lifted Up. But Be Lifted Up is different because it is a direct connection between faith, lifestyle, finance, and abundance that doesn't have to be couched in a secular context. Let me put it that way. That we can be honest and open. It's the first media platform, and I've done radio. I used to host a radio show on WVON called the Urban Business Roundtable. I've done every form of media, but this is my first platform where I can really say I'm being front and center as a Christian, as a follower of Christ, in the context of being a financial expert, a business expert, a media professional. And it does something for me, particularly post-pandemic, because got involved with it. I mean, Be Lifted Up was created before the pandemic. But coming out of the pandemic, I got totally recentered in my faith in a way that was different than pre-pandemic.
How?
Even though I was born and raised in the church, my grandfather's a Baptist minister. I come from a family that loves the Lord for generations and generations and generations. I think one of the challenges that I think as we're growing as Christians is that if we're born into it, we often think we're there. It was like the person that was born on third base and think they hit a triple, but they were born there, but they want to, and I think the pandemic for many of us, and I'll say for myself, quieted the whole world down. I was isolated. My children are all adult and grown. My most recent marriage was ending right as the pandemic was beginning. And I was in my home by myself, as many of us were. Couldn't use work as a distraction. Couldn't use, stuff as a distraction. And for the first time since I gave my life to Christ as a teenager, it was just me and God.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have time for me to go through the whole evolution of what that meant. But one of the things is that I came out of it finally being able to hear my own voice and God's voice far more clearly than I did before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gave me a new appreciation for God blessing me with a platform like Be Lifted Up that allowed me to bring my full identity as a man of faith, even though I'm also doing what I do as a ministry and as a profession.
Yeah.
And so it's just brought new energy to the idea that when we talk about bringing our whole selves to work, which is another element that came out of the pandemic, this idea that we should be able to bring our whole selves to our work. I think that includes our faith. And for a long time, the one area of diversity in corporate America that you could totally bring to work was your faith. But now there are actually faith-based employee resource groups in corporations. We just did a panel about this new element of corporate America at Black Enterprise's most recent Black Men Excel Summit, that there are diversity groups for race, gender, sexual orientation, and now there's diversity groups for people saying, I'm a person of faith and I want to be able to bring that identity to my work too. And for me, Be Lifted Up gave me a platform to do that professionally.
Wow. So you're in this, where we are in a digital space or a digital age where information is made available to you on demand. It's readily available. How do you think traditional media outlets like radio and print continue to shape our culture?
Well, what I would say is that the traditional media brands that still exist, like Black Enterprise, only exist because we were willing to transform our distribution outlets, our distribution.
Mm.
So when you look at who's still around, excuse me, from a traditional media standpoint and who didn't make it,
Mm-hmm.
it was those that refused to adapt to the realities of digital distribution of news, entertainment, information.
Mm-hmm.
And so I talk to people every day who say, I miss when Black Enterprise magazine used to be on the newsstand or used to come to my house. And there's a part of me that misses it too, just the way I miss vinyl records.
Yeah.
Putting our music on vinyl records.
Yeah.
And you can make money for the most part, putting information on pieces of paper and binding them together and mailing it to people. And so the Black Enterprise mission hasn't changed, will never change, but the method of distribution has changed. Same thing when you look at churches that adapted to digital distribution, many of them that were forced to during COVID, are emerged more robust because their returning in-person congregations returned, but they were still reaching this whole new audience of people beyond the walls that they never would have reached if they stuck to tradition. And so what I've learned as a person who was responsible in many ways for helping to lead, along with our CEO, Earl Butch Gray's Black Enterprise into a digital distribution model, was that we don't have to abandon the mission. And for me, you're not abandoning the ministry. You're just using a different way of serving that mission that's different from the old way. And, and so once you understand that, then traditional media is just media. Black Enterprise is now, depending on whose measurement you're looking at, the number 1, 2, or 3 top Black digital media brand in the country, despite our roots being a traditional magazine brand. And we're still, you see, the last printed issue we ever printed was a tribute issue to our late founder, Earl Gray Sr., which we all hold dear to our hearts. But to be profitable, to serve our mission effectively, you got to do it by digital, social, and that includes video, and that includes radio, which we now are really podcasts. Again, we're doing much of the same things. We're just using different ways of distribution. And when I counsel and mentor entrepreneurs in particular, I counsel them to not get so caught up in how you do it that you forget why you do it.
Mm-hmm.
To find your way, you must find your why. Your way may change, but the why can't change.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, a lot of people in the media got caught up in this is how we do what we do.
Mhm.
We do print on paper, or we do terrestrial radio, even when those platforms weren't profitable anymore. Fortunately, our late founder Earl Graves and his son, now the CEO Butch Graves, was saying, no, our why won't change, but how must change in order for us to remain viable and continue to serve our mission and our ministry.
Yeah, that's really, really good. I love your term that you're using, media ministry, because that's basically what it is, a media ministry. It's not the four walls of the church, but you're getting a message that is inspiring and empowering people. And another way that you determine you would use, or methodology that you would use, is through book, literary. So you authored a book called Loving in the Grown Zone. I love that title. I think you co-authored it.
Yes, I co-authored it with Zara Green.
The Grown Zone. What is the Grown Zone?
Well, the grown zone was a concept that boils down to this:
Mhm.
that the last stage of human maturation is not adult;
Mhm.
it's grown, meaning
Come on.
all it takes to get to adulthood is to survive puberty.
Mhm.
But grown is about continuous growth beyond that. And if you're still alive, you still got to grow and you still got to learn. And it should be reflected in the quality of your decisions.
Mhm.
Loving in the Grown Zone, the book was about, and is about, because I'm still very proud of it, about how do you make healthy decisions. And let me say this: I'm speaking as someone who's been married 3 times, and the second marriage was such a challenging one that I wanted to know what was driving my decision making patterns around choices in marriage and relationship that resulted in these outcomes that weren't my desired outcomes. So
Mhm.
long before I met Zara Green, long before we ever thought about writing a book, I was already on a journey of my own as a father and a divorcee. Why why am I making decisions? What is wrong with my decision making process? So Loving in the Grown Zone became what we called, you needed a driver's manual to learn how to drive. Here's your lover's manual to learn how to love, or how to choose relationships. You're born with the capacity to drive, but you're not born knowing how to drive. And I remember, again, this is before I met Zara Green. I was like, I need to understand why I'm getting behind the wheel of these relationships and having wrecks.
And crash and burn.
Passion and burning. And so Loving in the Grown Zone, again, and credit to my co-author, was a book we wrote to say, again, it's not the book that says, oh, here's how to be married and live happily ever after. It's about, before you even get on that track, what are some things, some boxes you should check, both in yourself, in potential relationship partners, that will at least help you to avoid the wrecks. Not every relationship is meant to go all the way to the altar, you know, but you can avoid the wrecks or survive the wrecks more readily. And that's what Loving in the Grown Zone was all about.
Yeah, I think everyone should get a copy of that book.
Oh, thanks.
I'm recommending it. How can people connect with you?
Well, the good news, as one of my children says, I'm a social media OG. Like my kids think I spend too much time on social media. So you can find me. I'm most active on Instagram, but I'm
Mhm.
also active on Facebook, active on Twitter, now X, active on Threads, and of course LinkedIn. So just look up Alfred Edmond Jr., Alfred Edmond Jr. I'm that on all platforms. I always follow, unless you're really an irritating person. I always answer. I respond to my own DMs. I love sharing information. I like being funny. I love sharing my sense of personal style and my fitness photos and all of that. So yeah, please. I tell people all the time, don't follow your dreams, follow my Instagram.
Come on. Oh, listen, mic drop, mic drop. I have to borrow that one. You have so many layers to you. We talked earlier. It just started out as a casual conversation. I looked up, 30 minutes had gone. But your inspiration, you inspire so many people. Your inspiration. Let's just start with your favorite book of all time.
Okay, I always have to sample to the side because that's
Mhm.
my favorite book of all time, especially the older I get. Uh,
Yeah.
and when I finally realized that it's not just about reading the Bible, it's about studying the Bible. You cross over when you realize you're supposed to be studying it, not just reading it. But so I'm going to put that to the side. I'd have to say my favorite book has to be Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God.
Really? I saw the movie.
I've read that book maybe 30 times since I first read it in college.
What about it? What about it?
Well, I got to say, when I read it in college as a school assignment, I didn't like the book. But when I read it the second time through the eyes with the benefit of a good friend of mine, a colleague named Pamela Johnson, who spent a long time at Essence Magazine, and I realized that they were describing the evolution of a woman, in many ways the same thing as Loving in the Grown Zone, working her way to what was ultimately a healthy relationship. And I'll give it too much about the book away. So I think what connected me was this idea of that we're constantly unfolding, and the heroine of the book ultimately found total acceptance, which is different from total understanding. We think love is about being understood, but real love is about being accepted, even if we're not understood.
How hard is that? How hard is that journey?
It's hard because we forget that we're not here to judge. We're here to love. A healthy relationship, you are here to love, not to judge.
I think the greatest
And as soon as you start judging,
yeah,
you start thinking, I need to understand you before I can accept you. Where love says, I will love you, and through that love, be open to understanding you. But I'm not going to hold my love hot I'm not going to withdraw or withhold my love to you pending my understanding of you.
That's pretty tough, though.
It is hard to do.
That's why
only know one being that did it perfectly, Jesus.
Yeah, but that's why Loving in the Grown Zone, that book really resonates deeply with me. And then you explaining why this book is important, the evolution. I mean, the evolution of a woman. If you have an evolved woman, you have an evolved world, basically, because Satan first attacked the woman, not the male.
True.
She holds the key to the prosperity, the success, the progress of humanity. And she's like the moon is to the sun. They don't compete with one another, they complete one another. There's no time, there's no ebb and flow of oceans, there's no seasons, there's no days, years, months without the cooperation of the sun and moon. So there's the cooperation, but there's also the completion. You cannot have one without the other.
Well,
I love that.
I want to add to that, though, because again, with the second reading of the book and every reading since then, it's everything you said, but it also still applied to me as a man in terms of my evolution. People have to remember, Adam was there when Eve did what she did. He didn't intervene. He didn't try to stop her. He was there. And over the years, I don't want to make it sound like I got this revelation when I was, 22, because I didn't. But over the years, I was like, this is about their joint evolution as a couple that hadn't taken place yet, if you will. Adam didn't take responsibility when we talk about the husband loving his wife as Christ loved the church. Adam wasn't there yet. And so when I look at that now, again, as someone who's been married and divorced multiple times and has had to navigate raising my children, and they're adults now. My son is now married with my first grandson. And I could do 2 hours on everything I've learned over the years. But the biggest thing was the second time I read Their Eyes Are Watching God, I not only looked at it from the woman's point of view, also looked at my own evolution as a man and what that maturation was supposed to be like, so that I could be, like I said, there's a moon and a sun. The moon can't do it without the sun, but the sun can't really do it without the moon either.
Exactly.
So it really was my first time gaining a sense of my own awareness of my journey from being at 22 an adult male to becoming a grown man, which by my own assessment, I didn't become a grown man until age 46 or 47.
Mm-hmm,
You
mm-hmm.
know?
That's very interesting. You know, we're talking about relationships here. Every relationship has to have a rule, a role, a boundary, an expectation, you know, and responsibility. Every relationship. And I
Yes.
think if you're ignorant to those R's, then your relationship definitely will not be successful. Because, you know, a lot of us, that whether it's your love interest or your staff member or your parent, no one is responsible for your happiness, peace, or joy. That's what you need to bring to the table,
Absolutely.
or we need to bring that to the table.
Well,
What,
even though our book Loving in the Grown Zone, it was, you know, obviously targeted toward people interested in romantic relationships, the elements of a healthy relationship are universal, whether it's employer to employee, whether it's father son, whether it's parent child, whether it's siblings. It's everything you said. The elements of what makes a relationship healthy and sustainable are the same across all relationships. And personally, I look at our relationship with God as the blueprint for what a healthy relationship is supposed to look like.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and if we're following that blueprint, and again, over the last, I would say, 10 years, I leaned into studying the Bible, not just as something that so I can call out scripture off the top of my head, which I still can't do, by the way, but to say, okay, how does this apply to the relationships that I'm having with my children, with even my grandson who's only 2.5, with their mothers, with, you know, before my mother passed, my mother, to apply that not just as, you know, theological study for the sake of being, you know, in sync when I go to church, but for the application of life when I'm not in church.
yeah.
And if you want a blueprint for what a healthy relationship looks like and what's required of everybody involved, that's in the Word. You just got to look for it and meditate on it.
Yeah, I consider my Bible, and everyone owns, you know, the whole idea of Bible, but my Bible is my life strategy book. This is where I get strategies from. My favorite book of the Bible, I think it's Genesis. It's a
Yes.
book of how to begin and how to begin again.
Yes.
So I love the book of Genesis. What is your favorite book of the Bible?
Ooh, I'm a Proverbs guy.
Okay.
Let me say this though. Again, they're talking about this renewed mindset coming out of the pandemic. My appreciation and understanding of the Old Testament is so deep now than it was before. You know,
Hmm.
I was almost like a totally New Testament person, you know,
Hmm.
and my appreciation, like you said, Genesis and the entire Old Testament is like, I'm back in it again because I always read and then I go back to the beginning and start all over. So what I'm saying is, I hear you. I'm here for you on that
Yeah, yeah,
Genesis.
yeah, yeah. And
But
I,
but
I
but,
like it because it's a human interest narrative.
yes, yes.
You know
But
how
Proverbs,
selects individuals. You know, he
yes,
doesn't select you based on your qualifications.
right, right.
Qualifies the call.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
so you firstly have to answer the call.
Yep.
And I
And
just
and be obedient, be trusting.
it's just it's a, like they would say in modern day language, it's a dope book.
It is.
It
It
is because
is.
you see yourself in the stories. We don't
Absolutely.
always get it right. Nobody gets it right. I think, you know, when we set people up as God,
Yes.
almost as if they're never going to make mistakes, but we're all winging it, aren't we?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Nobody
And
has a degree in tomorrow.
right. Right.
No, tomorrow has not been lived. When we get there, we live it out. So we're all winging it. But thank God we do have the wisdom, Proverbs.
Well,
But
that again, I'm a wisdom guy.
yeah,
I really am.
yeah.
And I can't get enough of Proverbs. I read them, and I have to say this, but I won't call it a pet peeve, but obviously, if you spend a lot of time on social media, certainly on Instagram, it is now very fashionable to post like a screenshot of a section of the Bible and then have a highlighted section, and I love them because I like that the word is being shared that way. But I also have learned to appreciate the idea that there's no one word of the Bible that's more important than the others. And if you kind of lean into the same ones that we know, I could do all things through Christ who strengthens me, but you leave out what came before that and what came after that, yeah, it becomes almost like a easily tweetable statement, but without the context of all of God's word. So like I said, I always urge people, yeah, it's great that you can like a whole bunch of posts on Instagram that tells you can do all things through Christ and all the ones that everyone likes to hear. But until you really read, especially the Old Testament again, for context, you don't appreciate exactly how practical God was when he was telling them, what his laws were in the Bible. Like every word is a word that is valuable as every other word. And I only say that, I just caution people about just taking their favorite little pieces of scripture, putting on a t-shirt and thinking they got it, when it's every word. No word of God is
Yes.
less valuable or more valuable. That it's all priceless. And I've learned to appreciate that, particularly with my reading of the Old Testament. As much as I could stay in Proverbs forever, I said I've just a new, deep appreciation. You got me started. I'm just going to stop there,
You
because
know what?
there's so many things that God says to do in the Old Testament that when you think
It's
about what he's telling you to
perspective.
do, it's very practical stuff.
Yeah, when you go to the Bible, when you approach the Bible, you could read from Genesis to Revelation with one focus. Your focus could be love, or your
Yes.
focus could be a relationship, or your focus could be finances, or it could be health.
Yes.
You'll find something on each topic.
Absolutely.
So approach, that's why you can read the Bible over and over and over and over and over again and get something new. It's your approach, your context, your perspective, your focus. You can read it for the biographies. You can read it for the historical context. You can read it for the theology or the soteriology or the anthropology. There's so many perspectives. And the beautiful thing about the Bible is it's alive, it's living.
Yes.
It's not dead words. These words will have an impact on all areas of your life if you can just apply it to your life. It's living.
And I'm a big
Says he sent his word and healed them.
yes, yes. And I'm a big reader. I love reading in general, and I'm a big reader of success books. Again, if you follow my socials, I'll do a hashtag now reading. Like my now reading, I'm reading Carla Harris's Lead to Win, her third book.
Okay.
I mean, Carla Harris is a powerhouse. But the point I'm making is that every business strategy success book, every success book you can read, and there are many great ones, there's no success tip, advice, strategy that wasn't first identified somewhere in the Bible through word or example. And so I always tell people the Bible is the original success book, because every other book or strategy of success can be found there as the foundation of God's word and what success is as defined by God. And I've read so many success books in so many different areas, particularly because of my work at Black Enterprise, I just see that pattern in every book that I read. When you look, I'm talking about authentically proven success principles and advice, and including obviously I haven't read all of your books because I can't keep up with you. I think you got like 30 books now, 32 somewhere, but I got at least 5 to 7 of them. I got about a third of them. And
You're
yeah,
my favorite person. You're my
yeah,
favorite person.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, you're my
Uh,
favorite person.
yeah, I don't just talk about it. I am about it. And I
Come
believe
on.
I believe in wisdom, and I got to get it to share it.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. So your favorite quote that motivates you? Your favorite quote?
Hmm. Hmm. I got lots of them, but let me see which one of that's resonating with me right now. And this is actually from me. I've shared it many times on social.
Hmm.
Trusting in anything but God is the definition of gambling.
Wow. Say that again.
Trusting in anything but God is the definition of gambling.
Wow. So,
Gambling is not a sin because you went to the casino. Gambling, the gambling that's a sin is anything you trust in that is not God.
so you know what that says to me? So when a person shows up at church, that's gambling anonymous. That's
Yeah,
getting your
it is.
gambling problem
It
fixed.
is. Because
That's
I know for me, I'm learning to not trust and lean on my own understanding or anybody else's. I'm trying to get, like you say, kick my gambling habit.
yes. You don't have to
Don't
gamble
look at
in life.
right.
When God gives you a guarantee, look, He said,
Yes.
"These blessings shall come upon you and overtake you
Yes.
if you hearken unto the word of God." And then He goes in Deuteronomy 28, verses 1 to 14, and He tells you what these blessings are. But then He said, these are the curses. A curse is the natural outcome of an act of disobedience to the word of God. And a
Yes.
blessing is a natural outcome to an act of obedience. So you don't have to gamble with
Right.
your life. You know how you have those movies where, they gamble and then they borrow from the mob.
Yeah.
And they don't pay the mob back.
Exactly.
And what does the mob does? You don't have the money. They pay with their life. And
Yes.
what I want people to do is stop paying with their life. Stop
Yes.
giving their life away to these forces that will never give you, your ROI, your return on your investment.
And that will absolutely let you down. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
another thing is not a quote, but a realization as I came through the pandemic. It's being reminded again that your resources are not your source. And too
come
many of
on.
us worship our resources. And the minute the gift from God becomes what you worship instead of God itself, that's idolatry.
Yeah.
As soon as you worship what you got from God over where the gift came from, but we do that all the time. We're like, oh, my job or my
Me
business or my
too.
career or and these are all blessings until you elevate them to idols.
Yeah, yeah,
And then, like you said, the natural consequence of idolatry is those blessings become a curse to you.
yeah, yeah.
So,
That's true.
and this is an especially important conversation for people, both in your audience and in my audience, or the people where we're serving, to understand that success, whether you're success in entrepreneurship, in business, in your career, however we define success, that the higher you go up, the more important it is to remember these things because
Yeah.
you can be blinded by your success.
Yeah, yeah. Those core values are important. Those non-negotiables are important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in one sentence, share your personal philosophy or approach to three things: business, success, and then personal growth.
Ooh. With business, it's you can't be fertile in a desert.
Mm,
If you're not making it a fertile environment for everyone around you, you can't be fertile.
hmm.
Because if, for example, if you're speaking as an entrepreneur, if you're have a successful business, but nobody around you can afford to buy what you're selling, how successful can you be? So you want to create a successful environment around you so that you can even be more successful and fruitful. So
Hmm.
that's kind of and that's why I believe in pouring into others, pouring in mentees, entrepreneurs, because the more successful they are, the more successful my network is, and the more I can thrive. And that's a business philosophy.
Yes. So let's look at a practical takeaway. How does a person, and maybe we could talk together about this,
Mhm.
how does a person create that successful environment? Like 3 steps, 4 steps.
Look, for me, it's one step. Look for someone to help.
Mm.
When you meet people, whether it's at a formal conference or a church, or just find out what they're trying to do and help them do it.
Hmm.
We're all walking around with pieces of puzzles that other people need. That's what we're all doing. We all have something that looks like it's useless to us. And God's
And
like,
that's the definition of wealth building, isn't it?
yes, God didn't give you that
So,
particular piece of puzzle for you. He's
yeah.
like, you're going to meet somebody and they're not going to have that piece, but I brought them in your path because you got that piece.
You know what? I prayed this morning. You just gave me the missing piece. I have this huge deal on the table, and I over the last couple of months, actually, I've been analyzing it and trying to figure out the approach that I need to take. And you just gave me the answer. It's very simple. It's huge. It's massive. It's very massive. And for me, it wasn't about business strategy. It wasn't about network. It wasn't about funding it. It wasn't about, any of that. That wasn't it. It was just this missing piece that I couldn't wrap my mind around. And you just gave me my answer.
Okay.
The answer to everything, the answer to wealth, the answer to success, the answer to prosperity is finding out, firstly, what the need is.
Yes.
Define that. Define the problem, define the need, and then be the solution.
Our founder, Earl Graves, put it very succinctly, and I love quoting him: sell to their needs, not from your needs.
That's it.
Sell to their needs, not from your needs. But we're so ultra conscious of our own needs that we often forget that. But I've learned by, again, the example of our founder, Earl Graves, and just through life experience, when you become known for someone that can help meet the needs of others, people will beat a pathway to your door.
They will. They will. They
People
will.
people will answer your calls. When that caller ID comes up and it's your name, oh, Dr. Cindy Trim is on the line, that call gets taken.
Yeah.
Because this is a person who continually, and I know this is you by reputation, who is continually finding ways to add value as opposed to trying to get value.
Yeah.
And that to me, that's the most important philosophy. Like I said in business, but you're right, really in all relationships, but certainly
Everywhere. Where's the need?
yeah.
If you're not needed, there's no door that's open. And then what are you bringing? What are you bringing to the table? What are you bringing to the table? That's
And
the first thing I ask all my relationships.
bringing cheerfully and unconditionally.
Yeah.
Like I've mentored hundreds of people over the years. I've been mentoring since I first got out of college because I felt under-mentored when I got out of college.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not doing it because I expect you to do something back for me.
Yeah.
Because my natural payoff is again, I didn't realize it when I was, 24 when I started this journey. But now I have hundreds of people who will just take my call.
Yeah.
They're thinking of things. Oh, Mr. Edmond, I thought about this. I thought about you. But that happens when you're known as someone who thinks about others without, oh, they didn't do this for me, so I'm not going to do that for them. I don't even think about that stuff, in part because they're not my provider. God is my provider.
Come on. And you said that earlier.
Yes.
They're just the resource. Here's the bottom line.
Yes.
When there's no resource, you still have the source.
And if you took the parable of the talents, whenever the good servants sowed that seed, they didn't get their reward from wherever they sowed the seed.
Mm-hmm.
They got the reward when the master came back and said, you did a good job with that.
Yeah.
And I think too many of us in business and in life sow the seed and then stand over it like, when is that fruit going to come up? And like, I just told you to sow the seed. I asked you to stand over and wait for the fruit to come up. That's not where your reward lies. Sow the seed, nurture it, and trust me. Again, stop gambling. Trust me. I told you. If you
Stop
do this,
gambling.
you will be rewarded. Don't worry about whether the person you sowed the seed into paid you or gave it back to you or gave, and so, there's a lot of posts on social media you see about, oh, if you're not pouring into me, I'm not pouring into you. And, I'm not, the whole, I'm no longer
That whole manipulation.
Yeah, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying you should allow yourself to be taken for granted, but if you're really giving for the sake of giving, you can't be taken advantage of.
Mm.
Because you're not expecting anything in return, at least not from them.
Yeah.
God says, do this.
I have so many images firing in my mind. I have this whole movie going on. A whole movie just from this conversation.
Well, you
People
already told me. You already
people
told me that you
gambling their life away. Stop gambling your life away. I mean, out of everything that you're saying, life is not a gamble. It's a guarantee.
It's a guarantee.
Life is not a gamble. It's a guarantee. If you obey God, if you are, following the laws of life, if you follow those laws,
if you believe God, if you literally trust in God's promises, and you say, no matter what happens around me, and no matter what it looks like, I believe you, then you're good. And,
yeah.
and let me say that you're asking me about my quote for personal growth. And this was really important for me, again, through my COVID shutdown experience in particular. I learned that anxiety is your signal to talk to God.
Fabulous. You're dropping.
Fear and anxiety that's God's signal to say it's time for you to talk to me.
Guess what? I mean, you're dropping so many nuggets today.
Yeah.
So many nuggets. I hope you all are hearing this. Anxiety is not your time to call your girlfriend.
Right.
It's a time for you to have a conversation with God. And trust me, if you talk to God, God will talk to you.
Because basically what you need is a reminder of what we've just been saying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For me, it's like, wait. He said he got me. Why am I tripping? God is always asking me all the time, like at least once a week, because I have morning anxiety. Most of the time I'm anxious when I wake up in the morning. And usually it's like when I go get on my knees and talk to him, he's like, why are you tripping? Like, why? Then he'll like bring to memory, remember that thing you went through last year? What happened? Remember that thing you went through yesterday? What happened? Remember that thing you went through? I'll give you an example. 12 years ago this month,
Mm-hmm.
I had successful prostate cancer surgery.
Mm-hmm.
I forget that it happened.
Wow. God will bring you
I
through.
never got sick because they caught it so early. I never got sick.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have any negative outcomes from the surgery. So it's almost like it never happened. So every once in a while I'm in the gym, and then, feeling anxious, and God was like, remember 12 years ago when you had that little thing? Why are you tripping?
Divine intervention.
Yes. So why are you tripping?
Listen. You got so many takeaways. Stop gambling your life away, because life is not a gamble. Stop tripping. Find you a mentor.
Yes.
There
And
are
you know the best way
people,
to find
and you
mentors?
mentor individuals. I mentor individuals. This is my way of giving back.
Yes.
Yeah. Guess what, guys? We are going to have a fantastic time coming up the 14th to the 16th
Yes.
at Andrew You're Strong. I'm so happy that Alfred Edmond Jr. is going to be our media partner. Make sure when you see him, he's going to be this handsome guy. He's going to be the one that is dapper, that's there. Just say hello to him. Those of you that are in the media space, any media space, whether it's print or whether it's fine arts or performing arts or social media, just say hello to him. There's a lot that you can learn from him. And I'm looking forward to doing life with you for a very, very long time. He is not only a media icon, and a Successpert. I love that. That's his branding. But he's a journalist, an editor, a media executive, and he's my newest media mentor. He's going to be mentoring me. So I'm just excited that I get an opportunity to be advised by someone like him. He's going to be with us. If you haven't tuned in, please do tune in to Be Lifted Up, which is a radio syndicated program. It's all about giving back, and this is his way to give back. It's educational, it's entertaining, it's inspiring, it's motivational, but most of all, it's practical. And he's going to be with us at Enter Your Strong. If you have not signed up now. I'm going to give you the opportunity to close us out and give us what they can expect from you as our media partner at Enter Your Strong.
Well, Be Lifted Up Radio is all about abundant life. It's about God's promise through Jesus Christ, our Savior, of life and that more abundantly. And to your point, if you trust God, if you believe God, abundant life and abundant living, whether that's through your finances, whether that's through your relationships, whether that's through your business or your career, however you measure abundance, you get more of it if you trust God. And Be Lifted Up, like you said, is a very practical show that talks about everything from mental health to entrepreneurship to money management, around what does it mean to trust God for an abundant life. And so that's what we're all about at Be Lifted Up Radio. You can listen to the podcast, both current episodes and past episodes, at beliftedupradio.com. That's the letter B, liftedupradio.com. And Be Lifted Up Radio on all social platforms as well. Letter B, Be Lifted Up Radio. And yeah, that's what we're about. But it's really your guide to living an abundant life.
And there you had it. And they, again, can connect with you in your all social media platforms.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for being our partner. And I'm looking forward to doing life with you and just leaving our dent in this world. God bless you, everyone, and make this an awesome day.